Welcome everyone. Welcome to the second week of the Argentina month. We're tasting this guy, the only sparkling in the box, 2018 Alma Cuatro Valle de Uco Pinot Noir Rosé Sparkling is what we're tasting. For a lot of you veterans who've been around since the very first time we put a South American box together, you probably recognize this label. It was one of our perennial favorites. We tasted their Blanc de Blanc, which is a Chardonnay sparkling. So they only make sparkling, Alma 4. But we are tasting their Pinot Noir Rosé this time. But yeah, pretty excited to try this. They're definitely my favorite sparkling wine producer out of Argentina, for sure. All right, but before we get into all of that, some housekeeping. Poetry Box recording number 2 is going to go out this Friday. Sorry about the mix-up in the email for those of you who are in it, which are most of you. Sent out the wrong link. Thank you for pointing that out, Sara Fuentes. So yeah, we can all watch the right video. But second one will go out this Friday, so keep your eye out for that. Case Club, Hits from the Past. All of that is due tomorrow. So at noon, I'm going to close the Case Club and Hits from the Past. So let me know if you want to get on that. A lot of you who requested have put in your order. I'm actually waiting to hear from you, Mr. and Miss Dahan, with what you guys would like off the Hits from the Past. I know you guys had quite a few things that you requested. Not all of them, I think, made it into the Hits from the Past. So that, but yeah, so whatever order you have, bring it in, let me know, put your order in. Besides that, I don't really have anything else. This month we are donating to Washington Youth Garden. So the link is right there in the chat box. Donation link is right there as well if you want to donate on size 6 for the wine club. Any questions about anything before we get into it? Into the wine. All right. Well, I promised that I would be demonstrating how to open a sparkling bottle safely. But did any one of you, it looks like most of you have already opened your bottle, but did any of you vets want to demonstrate how to open this bottle safely? If you haven't opened your bottle yet, for the rookies? I guess you guys have all opened your bottles already? Yeah, I mean, I figured. It's all good. I'll do it. So,
others, I give them a lecture.
All good. All right, so this is how you safely open a sparkling bottle. So usually there will be a foil that goes on top, right? And then there's usually like a little tab that you can pull out and then cut the top, or you can use a wine knife to cut the foil and peel it back. Anyways, usually there's a foil, but this one doesn't, which is fine. So once you remove that foil, there's usually this wire cage. There's a little kind of a circular kind of a knob, right? So you pull that out to the side like that, right? You push it down, you up like that. So you push it down. And I don't know why. I don't know why this is a convention, but whether it's Cava, whether it's Prosecco, whether it's Franciacorta, Lambrusco, Champagne, name it, Cremant. All the sparkling wines, their cages are always all 5.5 turns. I don't know why, but basically, so this, if you turn it 5.5 turns, it's going to come loose. There's so much pressure, especially in this method champenois and with method traditional. We'll get into what that means. There's an incredible amount of pressure in here. As soon as this cage comes undone, this is essentially a pneumatic weapon. There's about twice as much as air pressure in this bottle as there is in a car tire. So as soon as you take this off, and I see this all the time, people like take the cage off and leave the bottle and then walk away and come back. Like that shit makes me cringe because, you know, I've seen it pop off and break a light bulb. Our godfather, Marty, has personally seen in his career 4 people who've lost their eyesight from getting hit in the eye with a champagne cork. So these things really happen. So be careful. So you pull this down and then you put your thumb on it, your hand on it. Basically, you need to have something on it at this point. I don't have any towel on it. Usually that's a good thing to have when you're opening a sparkling bottle, just in case. Should be fine, but you know. So if I had one, I'll put that over, I'll drip it over here, and then I'll put my thumb on top. You take this knob and you turn it 5.5 turns. So by the 6th turn, basically it will come loose. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, now it's loose. It's completely open. So at this point, this is a pneumatic weapon. Do not ever let go of this top. I don't usually try to, and a lot of people take this cage off. I don't even worry about that. I just put my hand on top, and then I say use it as actually a grip. And instead of trying to wiggle the top, I just grab the top, and then I actually grab the bottom and then twist the bottom of the bottle. And then it just goes, back and forth. At some point, you're going to feel it go. So in restaurants, we were taught to make as little noise as possible. It's called nun's fart. Basically that little psst, hissing sound. But if you're at home, whatever, pop it open. It's one of my favorite sounds in the world. Champagne cork popping, but basically that. Then now you have the cork and the cage that all come up very safe. And now you're ready to drink. So now that you know how to open a bottle's sparkling safely, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be dangerous about it. But there you go. So anyways, cheers everyone. It's always a good time to drink some sparkling. So cheers. And it's Wednesday. Delicious. All right, so let's start with the map. Here we go. So where are we? We're in Argentina, right? Southern tip of South America, in Southern Hemisphere. Some of this is review, but last week we've talked about how basically this is right on the eastern foothills of the Andes Mountain, which is what separates Chile and Argentina. And then as you can see in the entire wine area, it's just all along the Andes, going all the way up to Patagonia. When you're talking about Argentina, it's pretty much all high elevation sites. Argentina as a whole has vineyards as some of the, on average, highest sites in the world. But on top of that, some of these northern parts where we were in Salta last week honestly has some of the highest vineyards in the world. So high elevation sites with hot, dry winds and kind of big diurnal shift. We talked about diurnal shift, right? The temperature change between daytime and nighttime. That's essentially what makes viticulture not only possible, but ideal here. So all that rain clouds get stuck on the Andes coming in from the Pacific coast. And then on this side, it just gets very dry and very hot. But because of that extreme elevation and altitude, it kind of cools things down and makes viticulture possible. Just like it was at last, this is Southern Hemisphere, like I mentioned. So the growing season is flipped, is a Northern Hemisphere. So in the north where we are, usually the growing season is from like March going all the way up until like August, September, and then harvest begins in September till about October, November, right? And but here, as in Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, South Africa, right, Southern Hemisphere, the growing season is opposite. So the vine is dormant in the winter months, which is July and August. And then spring breaks, the buds break at the end of September. And then the vine will flower in October. And then the fruit set happens in November. And then the harvest here takes place in February and April. So they're about to, Argentina is about to head into their harvest season, which is the busiest season for wineries. So if you're planning on visiting Argentina or any of the Southern Hemisphere wine regions, February is a good time because you also get to catch them during harvest, but also know that it is also the busiest time. So visiting these regions during the harvest time is both good and bad. It's good because you get to witness the harvest, but also if you're making appointments to taste at these like small wineries, it's oftentimes they're not available because they're out in the field harvesting grapes and making wine. I promised last week that this week that I'll kind of break down these regions, what each of these regions are known for. So it's kind of broken into three. So there's a north, and then there's a central, and then there's Patagonia South. So in the north region, we're basically talking about the top three, the Salta, Tucumán, and Catamarca. So these three regions account for only 2% of all of Argentina's wine production. So very, very small amount of wine that comes out from the top. It's a place of extreme. I mean, just over the Andes, like I mentioned, right? Over the Atacama Desert, which is some of the driest places on Earth. So it continues out onto this side, and the heat here is intense. It gets very, very hot in the not only summertime but in the daytime, but it's all mitigated by the altitude, extreme altitude. So we're talking about getting up to almost 10,000 feet, which is really, really high for vineyards. I mean, as a general, the Argentina is around like 2,500 feet at the lowest point. And then Uco Valley, where we are, is about 5,000 feet. But here up in the north, it gets up to like 10,000, 8,000, 9,000 feet, which is crazy high. Honestly, some of the highest altitude vineyards in the world exist in this place right here in the northern region. This is where you're going to find Torrontés, which is what we tasted last week. This is where it kind of comes from. That's what they're known for. And then the Malbec that comes from this region is going to be, because of that coolness and extreme altitude, it's going to have a lot more red fruit kind of expression, much brighter, not as big, inky, kind of bluish kind of Malbec that you'll find from a hotter and lower elevation sites in Mendoza. So that's the north region up here. And then this central region, the La Rioja, by the way, they have to call it La Rioja, not to be confused with the Rioja region in Spain. So it's La Rioja, San Juan, and Mendoza. These three central regions are called Cuyo. So if you ever see Cuyo, C-U-Y-O, on the wine label, it comes from these three at the center. And this is where the kind of the bread and butter, that meat, like the majority of the wine in Argentina is made. This is where 90% of Argentina's wine is grown, grapes are grown. Mendoza being obviously the most notable and prestigious wine region. They produce, and then Mendoza produces about 72% of Argentina's total wine as of 2021. So even Cuyo, this three regions in the center, this is where basically this is basically Napa Valley of Argentina. This is where pretty much most of Argentina's wine comes from. But even within those three, Mendoza is the most significant player in terms of quantity as well as quality. The most well-known subregions include in Mendoza, include Luján de Cuyo, and then you might have seen that on some of the Malbec bottles if you're an Argentine Malbec fan. And then Uco Valley, which is where we are this week. So we're in Mendoza, and Uco Valley is this little pink subregion right here. So there's the city of Mendoza, and in southwest of there, right up against the Andes foothill, is where we are, Uco Valley. Uco Valley has really come into limelight in recent decades because, again, Mendoza, out of all, they're pretty much all high elevation sites, but Mendoza is the lowest, kind of lower than the other northern regions. But even within Mendoza region as a whole, Uco Valley has some of the really high elevation sites. So we're talking about the extreme heat that you find, but also that elevation altitude from Uco Valley. So this has really got a lot of people's attention lately in the last few decades. And this is where the fruit for this week's wine comes from. Some of the most prized and celebrated bottlings of Malbec come from this region, as most of you already know. But it's also where a lot of French international varieties are grown. So if you ever get Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Chardonnay, as well as there's some Torrontés grown here. But if you ever get a Cab Sauv from Argentina, most of the chances are it probably came from Cuyo, or particularly in Mendoza. San Juan, just north of Mendoza here, this is mostly for like bulk wine. A lot of kind of like kind of mass produced wine region. Wines are made here. But a lot more kind of classic bottlings are made here. Some of the oldest, by the way, home of some of the oldest wineries in the country is Luján de Cuyo, which is right here, this little part right around Mendoza. A lot of it is because this is where immigrants settled, and this is where they started the viticulture. Then you go more south. Now you go to Patagonia. And I don't know if you know this about Patagonia. People think Patagonia is this like a big kind of like a mountainous region, and there are some mountainous regions, but really it's just kind of like this plateau that happens. So altitude here is not as less extreme as particularly if you compare to Salta and some of those northern regions, much lower. But there's because we're in southern hemisphere, and then now we're getting closer, more going more south towards the South Pole, essentially, and Arctic. It gets cooler as you come down. So the growing season here is longer. It is cooler. So even though it lacks in altitude as it does in northern hemisphere, northern parts of Argentina, it makes up by actually just being cooler because you're getting closer to Antarctica. Pinot Noir. This is where you're gonna find some incredible Pinot Noir coming out right now of Argentina. Pinot Noir is really, in my opinion, kind of like the latest, newest, coolest kind of grape variety that really kind of figured out what to do with it. They figure out how to grow it here. It's coming out of it here in Patagonia. Yeah, Pinot Noir showing great success. But you also, some of the kind of cooler climate varieties that you wouldn't normally associate with Argentina, like Riesling is actually growing here. Of course, Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, all the international varieties are grown. They're grown pretty much everywhere. But if you're going to find some, this is a really fun area to kind of explore because there's a lot of non-traditional varieties that you think of with Argentina grown here because the climate gets much cooler. Yeah, so, but just for the purpose of this week, we are right here, Uco Valley. This is where the fruit for this wine comes from. So who makes this wine? These four guys. So Alma Cuatro. Alma means soul. So these like 4 souls, essentially, what the name of the winery means. It's a joint project between 4 buddies. They're all winemakers on their own right, but they all met in enology school in Mendoza when they were 17. So going from left, this is Agustin Lopez. This is Mauricio Castro, Marcela Manini, and Sebastian Zuccardi. You might have seen that name, Zuccardi. They're quite famous, and they've done very well internationally. So you find Zuccardi wines quite a bit, but he's the son of the Zuccardi family, of the current kind of winemaker who leads the family business. Here's another picture of them. So yeah, they met in wine school when they're 17. 2 years later, they made their first 300 bottles of a Method Tradicional sparkling wine. That was in 1998, and now over 20 years later, 25 years later, they're still making wine together, and they currently produce. They've really grown. Last time we featured Alma 4, they had like 5 different cuvées, but now I think they also make they've added like 3 or 4 more. So I think they make almost 8, if not 10 different cuvées, all from different parcels of wines from Uco Valley, all high elevation sites. So we're talking about very basically mountain wines, is what we're talking about. Oh yeah, I showed you this picture last week as well, but this is kind of, if you took the cross section of the Andes, so this is a Chilean side, right, Pacific Ocean and Chile. I mean, just look at how high Mendoza is in general compared to Chile. So it's already at 2,500 feet. Uco Valley getting up to 5,000 feet. Again, Salta, where we were last week, we're getting up to like 10,000 feet. So really, really extreme kind of elevation, altitude. That's essentially what defines Argentina. And as you can see, all the clouds, snow-covered, rain, forest, clouds get stuck. And then on the other side, it just gets really dry and deserty. Aconcagua, in case, by the way, is the highest peak in South America. This is right between Mendoza and why am I blanking on the Chilean capital? What's the name of the city right across the Andes from Mendoza?
Santiago.
Santiago. Yeah, Santiago. Thank you. Yeah, so this is right between Santiago and Mendoza, the highest peak in South America. So what is this wine? Yeah, here's another picture of them, by the way. This is 100% Pinot Noir made in Method Tradicional style. So let me talk about what that means for those of you who are not familiar with it. So there are a couple different ways to make, a few different ways to make a sparkling wine. So the cheapest way, and this is how like Andre is made, is basically you make base wine, and then you inject CO2 into it, kind of like a soda gun at a bar. The bubbles are really aggressive, they dissipate quickly, and so that's one way. And then another way is, and this goes up in terms of price as well. So the cheapest is Andre, the injection method. There's also PetNat. We'll cover PetNat later on when we get to actually PetNat. But there's a tank method or Charmat method. It's the same thing. And then there's a traditional method or method champagne method. So for the traditional method and the champagne method, method traditional and Charmat method, both of them, you have to go through 2 different fermentations, to get bubbles in. Remember that formula that I gave you last week? Basically, the formula that makes alcohol and fermentation possible is sugar plus yeast equals alcohol plus carbon dioxide, CO2. That formula is essentially what makes wine, beer, any fermentation possible. So in a tank method, what they do is they make the base wine just like you're making regular wine, and then you throw that wine in a stainless steel tank, like a inert vessel where it's not porous surface, right? And then you throw some yeast and you have some sugar into that base wine. After it's been fermented completely dry, you throw some sugar and yeast into that tank and you cap it, right? And then because that formula that I just gave you, the yeast starts eating up all the sugar, they start peeing out alcohol, they start farting out CO2, and then all the CO2 has nowhere to go because it's capped inside this, inner vessel tank. That's why it's called tank method, or Charmat is the name of the person who founded this method. It's called Charmat method as well. So all that gas has nowhere to go because it's capped. So it dissolves into the wine, and the wine becomes sparkling, and then you bottle it and you sell it off. The Charmat method, that's how Prosecco is made. And it's all about preserving kind of freshness. It's all about preserving aromas. It's all about the kind of fruit quality, the primary fruit quality of the wine. And then there's a traditional method or method Champenois, which is you make the base wine just like you would do in a tank method, but instead of throwing the base wine into the tank, you put it inside the bottle. So for this one, they actually, after finishing the Pinot Noir wine in 2018, they actually put the finished wine inside this bottle, and then they throw some yeast and sugar inside this bottle, and then they cap it. But they cap it not with the cork and the cage that we see, but they cap it with a crown cap, like a beer bottle. And then over time, they put it in a kind of A-frame structure like this. In French, it's called pupitre. And it's called a remouage or riddling. Every once in a while, the person will come and they take this bottle by hand. A lot of times these days, these are done by a machine called gyroplate. But back in the days, and there are still producers who do this by hand, where they come in and then they twist the bottle a little bit, and then they increase the angle, right? And then they'll come back a week later, they twist, turn it a little bit, quarter turn, and they increase the angle. All the way up until bottles are essentially kind of standing up upright like this. The whole reason is that they're what's called lees. So the yeast and sugar that you threw in there to second fermentation, right? There's nowhere for the CO2 to go inside the bottle, so it gets dissolved into the wine, becomes sparkling. But now you have these dead yeast cells that's inside. Those are called lees. The whole reason why you do this is so you can collect all the dead yeast cells at the tip, at the mouth of the bottle. So it will end up looking like this. So all the lees would collect at the tip. So these are all dead yeast cells. And it's not just the purpose of this is not just to kind of collect all of them at the tip of the bottle, but it's also to kind of let the wine sit on the lees. And we'll talk about this when we're tasting it. When you leave the wine on the lees, when you age the wine on the lees, it picks up these kind of brioche, bready, kind of really savory, biscuity kind of nose. And then the whole point of doing traditional method is to kind of impart those kind of flavors. So those are called autolytic flavors, and we'll talk about that when we get to tasting it. But besides all of that, you basically leave it on the lees like this. And then, right, so these are another view of the lees in the bottle. And then you take that bottle, you dip it in a freezing brine solution. So the tip of the bottle will freeze, and now there's an ice pump with those lees. where those sorry, where the leaves were. So these will be frozen, and then they will disgorge it. What that means is they take this bottle and they'll pop it open. And because of all the pressure that's been built inside the bottle, the ice puck containing all the leaves will shoot out of the bottle. And then now you're left with a clear wine. And that's essentially how this is made. And then you top it off with a little bit of base wine. And then you can adjust the sugar level at that point. That's called dosage. You can, you know, it's a stylistic reason. Winemaker can put in nothing, no sugar, or some can put in, you know, 5 grams, 10 grams, 15 grams per liter of sugar, just to kind of sweeten it a little bit. It's both for flavor as well as also balance, because a lot of sparkling wines, one thing that all sparkling wines have in common is that they have really high acidity. So if you ever get a chance to taste base champagne, it is really hard to drink because it's so acidic. So in order to kind of balance out that acidity, they add sugar. And then they cap it with this cork that we see. By the way, these corks, when they first go in the bottle, they're actually completely flat and cylindrical. The reason why they have this kind of mushroom shape is because the pressure that's been built inside the bottle. That's how much pressure there is inside these bottles. Yeah, and then they put a cage on it. They tighten it up. And then they oftentimes, especially in champagne, they will age the bottles much longer. So not only will they age the wines on the lees during the secondary fermentation, but after they disgorge and then after they adjust the dosage, if they adjust the dosage and then put a cork cap on it, they will further bottle age the bottle before they sell it off to the market. So in this example, this wine is 100% Pinot Noir, made in traditional method, from 2 separate vineyards high up in the Woong Valley, about 4,600 feet in elevation, grown on sand, stone, and a calcareous soil. And the vineyard, by the way, was planted in 1994 and 1999. So we're talking about 25-year-old vines. So a decent amount of age on it. 20% of the grapes were fermented, you know, used 500-liter French barrel, and then the rest were stainless steel. And then it spends 40 months on the lees. So we're talking about over 3 years on the lees, and then with a further bottle aging on this. So usually this one is a vintage, so it's 2018. All the wine that's in here is all from 2018. But if you ever get champagne, cava, which is also made in the method champenois style, they're usually non-vintage NV, meaning they each year by law they have to pull back a certain amount of wine and keep it as a reserve. So, and that they add that back into that base wine before they go through the second fermentation. So a lot of these really old champagne houses have wines that are like 100 plus years old, 50, 100 plus years old. And that's what gives it that kind of the depth and then the opulence to the wine as well. But in this case, we have 2018 vintage. It is 40 months on the lees, 100% Pinot Noir from high elevation sites in Woong Valley. Is basically what we have. Cool. Any questions about anything I just went over about the production method or who they are, Argentina, before we taste the wine?
I had a question in the chat. Is most sediment then lees when you find sediment in, like, especially like in a sparkling? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so just
exactly.
Rid of that.
Yeah, it's mostly lees. Whenever the wine's kind of cloudy, we're talking about like those lees, because usually they would, you know, very conventional wine making, those things will get filtered out. But we deal with a lot of wines that have been filtered, so those are lees. With white wines particularly, and sparkling possible as well, if they have not been cold stabilized, meaning they don't drop the temperature on the wine to kind of precipitate out tartrates. Those are basically tartaric acid that's inside the bottle. And if they have not been cooled all the way down to a low temperature, sometimes they can precipitate out. So in white wines and in sparkling wine, sometimes you get to the bottom of the bottle and you'll see these kind of crystals. I'm sure you've all had that experience. Those are tartrates. Those are tartaric acid that's just been precipitated out. It's essentially what makes tartar sauce. Like you can use that to make tartar sauce. It's completely harmless. It's just not very fun. It's not enjoyable to have the tartarus in your mouth, texturally speaking, but it's totally harmless. You can totally consume it. Any other question? Is that like chill filtration in spirits? Yeah. Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I like, nicer or single cask or like fancy spirits often like brag like non-chill filtered.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't say that, the assumption is that it's chill filtered. So okay, that's like that temperature drop is what they're what that
exactly.
is.
Yeah. Again, completely harmless, but consumers sometimes freak out when they see these little crystals and sediments at the bottom of their bottle. So the producers will usually do the cold stabilization or chill filter to do. Any other questions? Excellent. Let's taste the wine. 1 sec. There you go. Do you guys see the grid? Yeah. Good. All right. Who wants to take the appearance?
I'll do it.
Excellent.
Volunteer for the easy one. So this wine, it's not star bright clear.
Yeah.
I would say it's clear over hazy, but you can tell it hasn't been like fined.
Correct. And this wine has not been filtered or fined.
Yeah.
Intensity.
Let's see. I would say pale to like medium, but like it's I would say like pale pink to rosé. My lighting is horrible, but it's definitely not like red, or it's definitely not like salmon on the spectrum. I would say maybe like between pink and salmon.
Yeah, to me, this is definitely got some of that like salmon color in there.
Yeah.
When
I move it around the different lights, it changes dramatically. So I'm trying to find like what the actual lighting situation is here.
Yeah, like this is to me the intensity wise is somewhere between pale and medium. And maybe closer to medium than it's pale, but like medium minus maybe medium. So yeah, on the exam I'll probably put this like medium minus like salmon. Like there's some coppery hue to this thing as well, so I might add that in. But it's not like a completely pink. There's definitely some like orangey, like orangey salmony kind of color to it for sure.
And what would the like different, like if it was deep, like I guess for certain colors, like deep orange versus pale orange I can get, but like I feel like there's like I don't know, straw or gold, like there are certain colors where I'm like, is it just a like, I feel like the intensity on the appearance often could conflate with like opacity, like how dark it is. So is that a like, are you Glenn can only say dog really, so he's just saying dog and hating all of our dogs. Anyway, yeah, so is it just a like how deep, like is intensity and deepness of color functionally synonyms in this instance?
I would say with the red wine, I usually use that. So I've said this where like pale.
Yeah, the like, can you read through it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But with the white wine and rosés or even orange wine, it tends to get not necessarily less about because you can pretty much see through it. But it's just like how intensely colored it is essentially. So I would say with the red, yes, there's a lot of like a opacity that plays into it. But with the white and rosé, it's just more of I don't know, subjective call about the intensity of how much color is present.
A like vibes based call and how like,
Yeah, exactly.
how vibrant it is. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I've always wondered that. Okay. And then yeah, so I don't have any deposits in mine, but I'm sure I'll get to some later in the bottle. As we earlier noted, it has not been fined or filtered. We don't do legs tiers. The bubbles are, what is the like descriptors that we use for the bubble, like creamy versus,
Well,
or is
that's where
that's later. Oh, that's
when
later. Okay.
yeah, when we're tasting it, but just on the look at what I would say is this wine is definitely effervescent. Like I
Yeah.
can tell that this is sparkling wine. There's a
Mhm.
kind of a pinprick, kind of persistent bubbles that are coming up, but very, very small, tiny bubbles, not these like big, big almost
And
like
is that where you would call out, like, because when you're blinding, you don't know the production method necessarily. So this is, you would say, like, because it's tiny pinprick, consistent bubbles, you would say evidence of like ancestral or champenois versus like if it was right, like
yeah,
or
you wouldn't
Andre or something for a mimosa, and it's like,
yeah, you wouldn't necessarily make that guess on appearance, but at least for your own sake in your head,
Yeah.
you're gathering clues. So looking at it, you're like, okay, these bubbles look really small and really persistent, which pushes me to think that this is a method tradition. So
gotcha.
then now you start removing things like Prosecco off the possibility candidate for the wine. Um,
Yeah. Glenn is in a eating and biting phase. It's super fun.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, good job, Chris. You get to pick the next person with the nose for the nose.
All right. I'm gonna go Dave T.
Sir Talbot.
I just felt that was coming, Chris. I don't know how. All right, nose. Clean.
This one is clean. This one is sound.
Yep.
Intensity.
I would say medium to medium plus for me.
Yeah, I think like my wine is very cold, but like I get it right around here. So
Yeah, I let mine get a little warmer. So,
yeah,
but yeah. No, I mean for what it is, I think it's fairly intense.
yeah. I think the medium plus, depending on the temperature, I think is a perfect call here. What do you got?
It's interesting because nothing really like jumps out. I would say honeysuckle-ish, maybe a little bit of apple.
Yeah, I get a little bit of like a little floral, pretty touch here. Yeah, maybe some like honeysuckle, maybe some rose petals or something like that. But yeah. What else?
I mean, there's not a lot of complexity on the nose, I'm going to be honest. Not for me.
Yeah, I mean, at least fruit wise. And again, it's not when you're entering into a traditional method, you're not talking about a lot of fruit. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is come out in the secondary. But even here, to me, there's still quite a bit of fruit here though. It's not, and that's particularly why some people don't like rosé champagne for that reason, because you're not drinking champagne for fruit. But oftentimes with that little bit of skin maceration, it brings out a lot more kind of different profile, like a flavor and a aromatic profile. So I think that florals are kind of good. Any green, citrus, stone fruit?
I don't really get too much, maybe a hint of something like a lychee or a pineapple,
Oh yeah,
passion fruit, something like that.
Hmm.
But it's very deep. And then I get some sort of green bell pepper here on the
Yeah.
nose, but pretty deep again.
Any red fruit? Any black fruit?
There's something underlying, which is sort of like a blackberry for me.
Yeah, to me, there's definitely some like cherry, red plummy kind of a thing. Again, not over the top, not super aromatic, but there's definitely some of that kind of a berry red fruit kind of a thing going on here. And what do you think of the quality of the fruit, character of the fruit?
I would say pretty fresh.
Yeah, fresh, right? Yeah, nothing underripe, nothing overripe. And then you had mentioned some green, you said? You get some.
Yeah, I get a little something chemically, which I normally associate with green pepper, but I don't know if it's
Yeah.
almost like a kerosene.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, to me, I don't get much of green here. Like this fruit here is really, really ripe. Nothing underripe here. The savory that I do get on this is much more just secondary kind of a note, but not necessarily the kind of green notes. Any spices, any stone?
There's a little bit of minerality to this.
Yeah, I get a little bit of stone here. I get a bit like a crushed rock kind of a thing, for sure. All right, secondary.
There's definitely something bready, but I can't categorize it. It might be sort of brioche-ish, or
This
maybe
is
like
obviously not the most autolytic, and this is what I was talking about, autolysis, autolytic. This is what happens when you age wine on the lees or the yeast. This is kind of the character you get: biscuit, bread, toast, pastry, brioche, cheese, wine, and all of that.
right.
Given that this spent 40 months on the lees, I honestly would have expected more autolytic. But having said that, there's still some autolytic notes here, which is obviously not the most autolytic wines that we feature here. But there's definitely some of that pretty autolytic thing going on. So yeah, to me, there's some of that like brioche, touch of that like cheese rind. Like if you ever smell like the end of like a Parmesan wine after it's been old, like it's been out for a while.
Yeah,
there's
totally
a
get
little bit of that. Yeah, so like to me, the savory aspect of this wine is coming from the secondary catalysis, not necessarily the greenness. Any MLF, any oak like that?
I mean, I get a little of unidentified cheese that we talked about on the MLF side, but nothing on the oak side.
Yeah, nothing on the oak, really. There's no new oak on here. When they say oak, we're talking about new oak, and there's no new oak here. So any baking spice and things like that. Any tertiary?
Make you convince me that there's sort of like an almond or some sort of nut.
Yeah, I think there's a touch of oxidation that's happening here. So when the wine is exposed to an oxygen, it's called oxidative environment, or reductive is the opposite of that, lack of oxygen. It can pick up this kind of nutty things. I do get a little bit of that, like marzipan, almond, not a lot. I think it's just starting to show. And again, this is a 2018 vintage, so we're talking about 7-year-old wine. So it can start to show a little bit of that tertiary. It's probably going to pick up even more as this ages. But as of right now, yeah, I do get a little bit of like just touch of the oxidation, the evidence of the oxidation. But the fruit quality, at least on the nose, I'm not getting anything dried. The fruit is still very fresh, very ripe, which is incredible that this is 7 years old, yet the fruit is still very, very fresh. Cool. Anything else, Dave?
As I told you, I mean, I get a little confused by the CO2 sometimes, which gives me a little bit of like burn in the nostrils. So it's something petrolish. It's not heavy, but I can there's something there.
Okay. Cool. All right, you get to pick the next person for the palette.
I'm asking for volunteers of who love sparkling wine the best to go first. There you go,
Sara Fuentes is pointing herself.
There you go.
I do want to do this. I want to try. This is I love these. When we did it last time, my other wine club, Grand Cata. Too.
Yeah.
And I just really like this maker.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah. All right, let's do the palette.
It's dry.
There's quite a bit of fruit here, and I say this all the time. Oftentimes, people confuse fruit with sweet. This wine is bone dry. So I have a lab data on this thing. There's 3 grams per liter of residual sugar on this wine, which is most humans cannot detect any sugar under 5 grams per liter. So 3 grams per liter is bone dry. So there's absolutely no sugar in this wine, but there's a lot of fruit, particularly like I'm actually shocked how much fruit there is on the palate as opposed to on the nose, because I didn't get a whole lot of fruit on the nose, but on the palate I get a ton of fruit. So you may think this is wine is really sweet, but it's not.
Yeah.
Correct.
I would say medium plus acidity.
That's an acid. Again, all the sparkling wines, the one thing that they have in common is that they all have quite high acidity. Tannin?
Do you get tannins with sparkling? No, right?
I mean, you can. because it's like a rosé, so it's got skin contact, but it's so short that I don't know how long this maceration was, but looking at the color, I probably think like 12 hours, 18 hours maybe. So it's just so little that it will not pick up any tannin. So no, when I talk about tannin, alcohol.
Like it's so delicious. I don't really taste much. It's so good. My guess would be maybe around 11, 12%.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, like 12%, 11 and a half. So yeah, that's right in the medium or low end of medium, high end of medium minus.
Good, I can drink it all.
Yeah. Okay, and also this is a thing, like Mendoza, really hot place. This is where you're gonna find Malbec that's in like 14, 15% range. But on the same region, this sub-region of Uco Valley, because it gets high up in the mountains, it gets cool. You are able to grow Pinot Noir, and you're able to grow get wines that are like 11.5%, which is cool. All right, body.
It feels very thin to me. Like maybe like I don't know, maybe like 2% or skim if you were doing
Yeah.
milk.
I was gonna call this about medium.
Yeah, medium.
The skin contact with the rosé sparkling, rosé in general, you're gonna pick up a little more body than you would the white wine, just because that skin contact that comes in. So yeah, I'll call this about 2%. I'll call this about medium.
Yeah.
Mousse.
The bubbles are tiny, but they are aggressive. I don't know what you describe it. Like there's like I just poured some and there's like a little tornado still going. Mine.
Yeah. I don't know. I think. Well, let me pour
Or
it.
no. What are you really? Yeah.
To me, the
Like it doesn't hurt.
bubbles here.
Like they're not like I guess yeah, they're not aggressive. They look aggressive. I'd say delicate maybe.
Yeah, I definitely call this delicate. I mean, this is like there's a lot of it, especially in the fresh glass, but none of it is like big bubbles that like if you like took a big sip of soda.
Yeah, it's not like from my soda stream aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'll call this delicate, like a pinprick little massaging of your tongue, essentially. Flavor intensity.
I think maybe medium plus, medium plus. It's pretty
Yeah.
delicate, but they're
Yeah,
like, yeah.
100%. I will call this. I will somewhere between medium plus is where I'm finding it, but I'm gonna go with medium plus, especially as this wine warms up a little and opens up a little. It'll probably definitely get to medium plus. But yeah, just not shy. I mean, the flavors are there for sure. Now, do you confirm everything that Dave pointed out? Is there anything else that sticks out to you?
Yes, I totally agree. I do also feel like when you're tasting it, you get a little bit of kind of like a dry, like a dehydrated apple almost.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think what both Dave and you and I myself were picking up a little bit is that there's a little bit of tertiary start to come in on this wine. There's definitely some dried fruit, some of that like almond oxidation coming in. So there's definitely some bottle aging. I mean, again, this is 7 years old. It's it's 2018 and it's just being released to the market now. So it's been cellaring and aging in their cellar all this time, and it's starting to pick up some of that dried fruit, start to show some almonds,
like dried apricot, maybe that's it. Like
okay. Yeah,
a cheese plate, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, okay. Anything else?
No, everything else like totally got like the honeysuckle, maybe a little bit more red fruit than there was in on the nose.
Yeah,
Cherry.
yeah. To me, there's still so much like fresh fruit on this thing, which is incredible. That it's starting to show tertiary, but we're still holding onto a lot of that freshness. Yeah, that kind of like the red currant, red cherry, a lot of red fruit comes to me, like even strawberry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In the palate, even more so than in the nose. And the one thing I also pick up is that there's some creaminess here. There's some mallow that this went through. So I guess some of that like a creamy kind of nature, which is incredible because as you all know, my palate, I suck at distinguishing MLF, especially on the nose. But on the palate, I'm actually picking up some like a cream, kind of like there's some lactose dairy kind of a thing going on here for sure. which is great on the backdrop of this like really sharp high acid or something like the creamy, rounder, kind of softer things, which is delicious. But yeah, all the things, the touch of floral, pretty. The strawberry, red currant, red cherry kind of really comes through on the palate, even more so on the nose. Really fresh, really ripe. That kind of like a little bit crushed rock, not hugely mineral, but
There's some crushed rock. Yeah, the
yeah,
mineral.
there's a little bit of like a crushed rock thing going on here. This yeast for sure. I guess some like yeasty brioche is particularly what keeps coming to me, and then cheese, right? And then touch of cream from the MLF, no oak. And then, yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a like touch of the oxidation that's coming in. It's just starting to turn, just starting to develop. But yeah, I think there's a touch of the oxidation, touch of that kind of the fruit character just starting to change from fresh to maybe drying out a little bit, which is cool. All right, finally, the length.
It's got a kind of a minute on it. Like I had a little while ago. I'd say medium plus.
Yeah, I mean, mine is still going.
Yeah,
It hits me.
like from the taste I had a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, first it hits me with that, like the fruit, the flower and the fruit, the primary, and then all the like, I almost have this like a creamsicle kind of a thing, like a strawberry creamsicle thing coming through, and then some of that tertiary coming through. So yeah, I'm gonna call this medium plus as well.
Are those like Haribo strawberries?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, strawberry rings. Yeah.
All right, bring it home for us, Sarah.
Well,
How good is this wine? Justify it, and would you age it?
I really liked it. Like it was like medium plus, and it was everything except for body, which is what you want from a sparkling. I would call it very good.
Yeah, so balance. I think this wine is very well balanced.
The tertiary flavors. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some tertiary. So balance, well
But
balanced. Complexity, we called out a few things in primary, flower, fruit, red fruit, crushed rocks, and then we got the secondary, which is we got the 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 autolytic flavors of brioche and
yeah.
the cheese rind. And then you even get some of the tertiaries just starting to show up. So we're kind of hitting all three. So I'm going to call them medium plus complex. We call intensity medium plus on the nose, medium plus on the palate.
It's medium plus complex and not like high complex. Like that seemed like a
Yeah.
lot to be going into tertiary and then have so many.
Absolutely.
You know, like I feel like that should, yeah. How come that's medium plus and not high?
So if there were even more things, like, right, if this was like, if I was hitting some savory other notes, and then there's, yeah, more tertiary things, I'll call it high.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fairly complex. I mean, it's not like a simple wine, right? It's not one noted wine. There are a few different things that are going on here. And then finally, length, you called it medium plus as well. So when you look at it, it's balance, medium plus complexity, medium plus intensity, medium plus length. So the average all of that comes up to medium plus. So we're going to call this very good.
Very good. And if the price is right, I would call it outstanding.
I mean, value proposition is always a part of my game as well. But
Yeah.
would you age this?
You know, yeah, because there was all these like interesting things happening already with tertiary. Like, is there going to be, like you said, it's right on the edge. Some things are just starting to peek out there in tertiary. Like, it'd be interesting to see what happened. Yeah, I would. Even though
How
like
long?
really good, there's so much of an acidic backbone
Yeah.
to it, and if the fruit tastes a little less fresh, I think it would still be interesting and delicious.
I am beaming with pride as you hear you talk about how long to age it and why you would think that it should age. But yeah, absolutely. So, right, in order for wines to age, you need two, right? Structural component and flavor component. Structurally, we're talking about acid and or tannin. This one doesn't have tannin, but this one has pretty high acid, right? Medium plus acidity. So it's got a good structural backbone, good vertebra. And then the flavor component, we're talking about intensity and complexity. Intensity, we call it medium plus on the nose and the palate. So decent, very good intensity. And then complexity-wise also, with quite a few things already going on, tertiary already start to show up, but so much, the majority of the wines are still very much primary fresh fruit driven. So as you age this longer, a lot of the fresh fruit will change into tertiary, and then adding more complexity to the wine. So it will go from probably medium plus to high complexity, kind of what you're talking about, Sarah. So I think this is an excellent candidate for aging. And this is already 7 years in, and it's already, it's still showing very, very fresh fruit. So I would say this wine, I mean, I think it's delicious now. I think it's drinking beautifully right now, but I think this would age beautifully over next, honestly, 5 to 8 years easily, if not long.
It was really good. Yeah. And like, I feel like the fresh fruit wasn't the majority. The freshness of the fruit is not the majority of the appeal.
Yeah.
So if you lose that, or that it gets slightly less fresh, you're not going to lose what's beautiful about it.
Right. And, you don't ever, so there's such thing as aging the wine too long, right? Like, I mean, we talk about it here, development on the nose, where, so the youthful is when all the wine is all primary, developing is when they start to show secondary, tertiary, fully developed is when it's hitting the like peak where you are getting some equal harmonious amount of primary, the freshness, and tertiary, the secondary, all of that is singing. And then, but on the back end of it, there is such thing as tired and past is best, where you lose all that primary, all the fresh fruit, and then everything has become kind of dried, oxidated, nutty.
Yeah. My dad buys crappy wines and stores them poorly and keeps them too long. And so
Yeah.
that
happens. That happens, exactly. Yeah.
So,
yeah, and then what happens is that not only are you losing freshness, but also the wine actually becomes less complex because you've aged too long, because now it's lost that freshness, and now the flavor is becoming a lot more homogeneous in the one.
Yeah. All you taste is like the mustiness. I wish Leah was on this one. She'd tell you, like, opening a bottle of wine at my dad's place. It's usually like a Coppola that's been aged for like in a hot, place, or that's been aged for a long time.
For sure. Cool. Excellent job, everyone. Any questions about anything? Any disagreements about tasting calls? Atlantic salmon. Okay. I want to call dibs for taste. I volunteer. Really, I can. Tangerine, some orange peel. Okay. Although I think it's some combination of the scents. Touch of VA. Okay, maybe not VA. The kerosene DT. Ah. So another person was talking about kerosene. Is anybody else getting some like petrol kerosene kind of thing here? Yeah, I'm not getting much of that personally, but cool. Any questions?
We talked about the acid on this. I find the acid on this like really, really high.
Yeah, it's high.
like almost on the margin of it being too high. So does that make it a wine that is less conducive to drinking without food, or?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you're finding it way too acidic, for sure, the food will always help. Food with wine always helps. This one doesn't see any dosage, so it's essentially brut zero. To me, it doesn't come off out of balance. Maybe for some of you besides Dave T, I don't know, is acid kind of bothering you, like in terms of how high it is?
It's not bothering me, but I really like the, I don't know if it was the Blanc de Blanc. I know there's a white of this that I used to get at Domestique that I would get all the time when they would have it because it was delicious. And it definitely had a lower, it was definitely softer on the acid, and which is, I don't know, I mean, I guess it's a little, it seems a little weird that the rosé would be stronger. I don't know. It's like, it doesn't bother me, but I just feel like I was trying to figure out why I think I liked the white better. And I think it's because of the acid imbalance.
It is also possible, and this is where the perceptive, why they don't put in that, when we're talking about sweetness level, they don't put in 0 to 10 grams per liter.
Right.
11 to, there's some perception there. So it is possible with the Blanc de Blanc that they actually add some dosage, just kind of round it out. So it feels less acidic.
Yeah, because so it's,
actual acid level may be high, but it just doesn't come off that acidic. It's like biting off You like imagine biting like a lemon versus like biting a wedge of a lemon that's covered in sugar. Like it's the same lemon, but
Right.
one that's covered in sugar is going to come out way less acidic, less junk.
Yeah, that's fair.
Any other questions?
So I think what I wanted to comment on, more than a question, just a comment.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me, and I guess my question is anybody else experiencing this? When I take a sip, I feel like the wine evolves very quickly. Like I get a lot of fruit and acid up front, changes into that more brioche creaminess. And there's not many wines that have had that change so dramatically, so rapidly on the palate. I find that really interesting.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this wine is also getting better and better as it's been open for a bit now. But yeah, like that finish is like evolving. It's not just like one note. It's like you start off with one and then it kind of travels. It's quite nice.
Yeah,
it's really good. It's really good. Did everybody like this one? Did anybody not like this one? Dave T. Yes, I know sparkling, Dave.
No, I just can't. To me, it's like there's a sourness to it. Maybe it's the acid that I just can't get over.
Yeah, it's
I
high
mean, I
acid.
appreciate it. I think it's well crafted. It's just not for me.
Yeah. Get it with some fried chicken next time. It'll make you think differently about it.
I'd second Dave, Corlette. I think it's really interesting how quickly, it changes in your mouth. Like, I like this a lot. I like it more than the Blanc de Blanc, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very different.
I just like the fruit notes with that like autolytic flavors. Like, I think it works really well.
Yeah. Some people don't like rosé champagne for that reason, because they're like, I don't want fruit. Like, I just want, autolytic and like these savory notes. But, I don't know. I like rosé champagnes personally, but some people don't. So that's just personal preference. It's not that one is better than the other. Though rosé champagne is only made in very few vintages. If you're talking about actual champagne, only a few select vintages, and it is oftentimes way more expensive than Blanc de Blanc. So, all right, let's play everybody's favorite game. How much do you think this wine is on a retail shelf? How much would you be willing to pay for this on a retail shelf? Or how much would you be happy paying for this on a retail shelf? 25, 25, 30, 37. All right, Sara Fuentes.
I really like this one.
I can see that. All right. 26, 28, 29, 29, 30, 35, 27, 28, 32. All right, we're going to 30s, huh? I mean, this is a 40 months on the lease, 7 years in the cellar before being released, right? I mean, if this was champagne, this would be in the hundreds of dollars, right? But we're in Argentina. So the winner is Liz Dahan, right on the dot at 27 bucks. This is 27 bucks in the retail store. I mean, that's incredible. 40 months on the lease, 7 years of aging, this amount of complexity, this amount of length for 27 bucks. This is why you should not sleep on Argentina. This is why you should not sleep on Chile. This is why you should not sleep on South America. Like, there's so much great value proposition to be found. So, is it champagne? No, of course not. But value-wise, like for bang for your buck, it's hard to argue against this. You know what I mean? So there it is. Cool. Good job, everyone. Any other questions? Comments?
Are you gonna put their other, because we now had the Blanc de Blanc and we've had this one. Do you think you're gonna put their other releases
So
on the box?
I just checked with the importer. They make wine, the Blanc de Blanc, so Chardonnay, that's aged 10 years on the lease. And it's like a special order, only like 50 cases make it into US, and then it's apparently landing in California in like 2 to 3 weeks. But it's a special order, so I have to order like a full case. It's probably gonna be like $45, $50 per bottle. But fucking 10 years. It's aged for 10 years on the lease. But if I can get enough people to go in on it, then let's get a case. You know, let's special order this wine. So.
Okay, I'm in for a couple. If someone else will do it too, I'll do like
Yeah.
2.
I'll join. Send the email in.
Yeah, send
Okay.
the email. I'm in.
Excellent.
I do.
Excellent.
I like. It was so funny because when I unpacked this box, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I recognize the label!" And it's because I think Janet and I bought a case from the last time that I had it. And I was
It was very popular. It did very well. You guys loved it.
Yeah, it was like perfect for mimosas, perfect for like just drinking. It was like the best, like cover every event type thing. I mean, I don't know. I totally agree that this is super acidic, and it's like a good enough wine that it can drink with pretty much anything that you eat. I do think I needed more fat, to really be able to taste the flavors. I don't think I got some of the fruitier flavors that you guys were describing. Yeah. Although Sada's call on the dehydrated apple, I was like, holy shit, that was really good. That's a good job. Anyway.
Yeah, that dehydrated red apple thing here. Yeah, I think it's a good call for sure. Yeah, Arma for the first one was really popular. You guys bought a lot of it the first time. And you know, honestly, like the value proposition, like, you can't go wrong with this. I mean, it's a greatly priced for.
It was also like it was 100 years ago, and I think it was only $14. Like for some reason I think it was like super cheap, right? Yeah. Like and it was before.
Yeah, this price went up. This was
inflationary pressures.
Exactly. Yeah, this was even cheaper. Like 3 years ago when we did, for sure. Cool. Well. Any other comments? Questions? Complaints?
Not about this one in particular, but how much should we be stocking up, and from what countries in anticipation of Trump tariffs? Right. Europe. Last time, French wine, we got into it with the EU. Like how big should our wine stores be?
I mean, let's just put it this way: the importers they actually placed a huge order at the end of last year, hoping that they can get their shipments in before the tariff kicks in. They're actually betting on it that it's going to go into effect and it's going to drive up the price. So they actually put down a lot of money than they normally would to bring in a lot of French wines. So Western Europe, I would say, if that's your kind of jam, I would say it's probably worth it to load up on it.
But like, I feel like none of us should be surprised if it's something super fucking half-assed like it was last time, where everybody just put that their wine was above 14% and they get taxed. Like, what is different this time, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But they're somehow betting that it's going to get worse. I don't know. But
I would say if you are a big fan of Chinese wine, definitely buy it now.
I feel like I took care of stocking up with the blast from the past order that I just placed.
All right, I gotta tell you guys, not to brag about Mr. Corlette, or maybe it's problematic. I don't know which is. I don't know if I should be proud or I should be worried for you, Mr. Corlette. But
a bit of both.
Yeah, he just ordered like 13 cases on his from the past. I'm like, Jesus. Like, I literally like all year loud when I got it. I was like, holy shit, Dave.
Impressive. My stock of wine for the year, man. What are you gonna do?
No, I mean, I appreciate
you only do this once a year.
Think of the savings. Think of the opportunity. Happens once a year. Prices are about to rise.
And I'll say this, like, over the holidays, I went to the wine store. I bought a bunch of wine, and I drink it. I get a headache. It's just terrible. I don't know where to get. You've spoiled me. Now I can natural wines that are high in acid.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Over Thanksgiving, we went up to Massachusetts to visit Hadley's family, and they have a town over from her parents. There's like a really good wine and spirits store, and that has like a lot of natural or low intervention wine. They had like a massive shelf of like stuff that had been like water got on the label, or like it was somehow like it wasn't pretty looking, like the wine version of the like bruised produce sort of thing. It was like everything was half off, and it was absolutely great. Like grabbing like Beaujolais and high acid Rieslings, and I was just like going down because we didn't buy any of the Thanksgiving box stuff because we were flying, and I didn't want to like check, and so I was like, all right, like based on what I should be buying, I like went with a list, and it was great. Yeah, no, like feel equipped when I'm in a wine aisle to be like, all right, I haven't had this, but here's the on spec, it looks good. But yeah.
Yeah, and soon you guys, most of you have been, with me for a while. At this point, you've kind of gotten familiar with some of these regions around the globe. So just like even if you don't know nothing about the producer, just knowing what region where it comes from, you can probably kind of guess what that is going to be like, which is a good place to be. So for sure.
Yeah, but that's not my experience, because you always feature wines that are quite different from the standard wines for that region.
Yeah.
Your Cali, the latest California box, like those were totally different than the typical California wine that you get at the grocery store or whatever. So
yeah.
Dave is right. My sister's like, I only drink Un wines. That's it. She didn't drink anything else. Only things are chosen by you.
Yeah, people are used to, and your friends are like, where do you get these wines? Like, what are these wines? Like, what?
He made our wine taste.
Yeah. I know every time I bring wines to Thanksgiving, either they either love my wines or they fucking hate my wines. There's nobody that like your wines, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want to be.
Serve your wine to my in-laws. Like my father-in-law only drinks heavily oaked, conventional California Cab Sauv, Cabernet, Cab, whatever. And my mother-in-law only drinks Pinot Grigio from, like Marlboro or whatever it is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I can't serve them this stuff. They just have no idea.
Yeah. It is true. It is true. Sometimes it's not everybody's going to appreciate the wines that you guys, I feature and you guys get at Sexual Wine Club, because it's a little too weird for some people. They're like, they're not ready for it, but it's part of the fun, if you ask me. It's like, either even when people are like, oh my God, this is fucking terrible, why would you drink this? And like deep inside, I'm like chuckling. I'm like, all right, let me turn off the recording.